On the afternoon of May 20th, 1975, an apartment manager at Concord Gardens in Concord, New Hampshire, entered Unit 4 of Building 19 to collect overdue rent. He had knocked repeatedly but received no answer, though he could hear a baby crying inside. What he discovered would haunt the community for the next 50 years. 22-year-old Judith Lord lay dead in an upstairs bedroom with a blue plastic covering over her face. Her 20-month-old son, Gregory, was found unharmed in an adjacent room. The scene showed signs of a violent struggle. A curtain had been ripped from the wall, cigarettes scattered across the floor and bed, and an alarm clock lay upside down, its hands frozen at 1:47 in the morning. Judith had moved into the apartment just 2 months earlier. She was living alone with her young son and was known in the community as friendly and outgoing, often carrying her guitar with her. An autopsy revealed that Judith died from homicidal strangulation. Evidence at the scene indicated she had been sexually assaulted. Crime scene technicians spent over 2 days processing the apartment, meticulously documenting and collecting evidence. They recovered critical forensic material, including hairs found on and near her body and towels that were later determined to contain seminal fluid. Every piece of evidence was carefully preserved, a decision that would prove crucial decades later. The last confirmed sighting of Judith alive was around 11:30 on the evening of May 19th. She had been at a volleyball game in the common area of the apartment complex. Before going home, she asked a neighbor to walk her to her door because she felt worried about her safety. The neighbor checked inside and confirmed everything looked normal. Judith locked the door and went home for the night. Around midnight, neighbors heard water running in a shower. Just before 1 in the morning, 24-year-old Ernest Theodore Gable arrived back at the complex. He lived in the unit next door to Judith. At approximately 1:30, several residents were awakened by screaming. One neighbor identified the voice as Judith's and heard her yell, "Leave me alone," before the sound was abruptly muffled. The disturbance lasted only a few minutes before silence returned. Investigators quickly focused on Ernest Gable. His fingerprints were found on the exterior of Judith's window. Multiple witnesses reported that Judith had expressed fear of Gable in the days before her death. He had made repeated unwanted sexual advances toward her, and witnesses heard him make crude remarks about her. Blood analysis showed that seminal fluid found at the scene matched Gable's blood type. Physical samples were collected from Gable to compare with the forensic evidence. This collection would establish important legal precedent. Gable challenged the search warrant that compelled him to provide samples of his hair and DNA. The case, which used the pseudonym John Doe to protect Gable's identity during the active investigation, made its way to the New Hampshire Supreme Court. On December 3, 1975, the court ruled in favor of the state. This decision created a legal landmark, establishing that law enforcement could obtain biological samples during investigations. What is now routine practice in criminal investigations was made possible through the Judith Lord case. But microscopic hair analysis changed everything. Hair samples from the crime scene were sent to the FBI Forensic Laboratory for comparison. At the time, this technique was considered the gold standard in forensic science, with the FBI being the leading authority on the method. Examiners would place hairs under a microscope and compare physical characteristics such as color, texture, thickness, and length to determine if they matched a suspect's hair. Unlike DNA analysis, which can definitively link biological material to a specific individual, microscopic hair comparison could only suggest that hairs might belong to certain class groups based on general characteristics. On December 16, 1975, the FBI reported that the hairs from the scene were microscopically different from Gable's samples and did not originate from him. This definitive conclusion contradicted all other evidence pointing to Gable. Prosecutors had been prepared to indict him. The fingerprints, the witness testimony about Judith's fear, the timeline of events, and the blood type match all indicated his guilt. But the FBI report created what prosecutors felt was an insurmountable evidentiary hurdle they could not overcome at trial. the investigation effectively stalled. With no other leads to pursue, the case went cold. Ernest Gable had a documented history of violence against women. Multiple women described incidents in which he had attempted to strangle them during non-consensual encounters. He had a criminal history and was well known to local police, but without the ability to overcome the FBI's findings, no charges were brought. Gable moved to California and began using the alias Ernest Stanberry. On February 1, 1987, at age 36, he died in Los Angeles from a stab wound, never facing justice for Judith's murder. In 2003, state investigator Todd Flanagan reopened the case. DNA testing technology had advanced far beyond the microscopic hair comparison techniques of the 1970s. Modern DNA testing was conducted on the seminal fluid from the crime scene. The results were conclusive. The DNA matched Ernest Gable's profile with odds of 1 in 6.5 million within the African American population. The flawed hair analysis was not an isolated incident. In 2015, the Department of Justice and FBI acknowledged that nearly every examiner in their microscopic hair comparison unit had provided flawed testimony in more than 95% of cases reviewed.
On Christmas Eve 2004, 51-year-old Robert Cavanaugh disappeared from his home in Mansfield, Connecticut. For 21 years, his family searched for answers about what happened to the husband, father of 4, and Connecticut corrections officer. They lived with the uncertainty of not knowing whether he was alive or dead, unable to find peace or closure. The mystery would not be solved until the fall of 2025, when partial human remains surfaced in the waters of Mansfield Hollow Lake, setting in motion a chain of events that would finally provide the answers his family had sought for more than 2 decades. Robert Cavanaugh was the oldest of 9 children, born in Salem, Massachusetts, and raised in Ellington, Connecticut. He attended Ellington High School, where he played basketball and baseball. After graduation, he married Margaret Williamson and began working as a long-haul truck driver for Stanley, the New Britain-based tool and hardware company. Despite the demanding schedule that took him away for weeks at a time, Cavanaugh made extraordinary efforts to connect with his 4 children, Teresa, Diana, Luke, and Joseph. During summer breaks, he would bring them along on his routes. They would drive for days, stopping at baseball stadiums across the country. One memorable journey involved driving to Kansas to watch a Royals game. His daughter Teresa would later describe him as the king of putting together last-minute trips to sporting events. When home, Cavanaugh taught his children baseball and softball, took them fishing, taught them gardening, and spent hours with them outdoors. His children later recalled that when they thought of their father, their first memories were of being outside with him, learning the things he loved. Cavanaugh had a lifelong dream to work in law enforcement. In 1999, at age 46, he left trucking and began working as an officer with the Connecticut Department of Correction. It was a significant midlife career change, transitioning from the independence of long-haul driving to the demanding environment of correctional work. He was still employed there when he disappeared 5 years later. On December 24, 2004, Robert Cavanaugh was reported missing from his Mansfield home. Authorities believed he had left behind a suicide note, though its contents were not made public. His family later confirmed he had been struggling with mental health issues before his disappearance. His daughter Diana would speak openly about how he struggled with mental illness toward the end, noting that while he appeared outwardly normal, he was privately battling challenges others could not see. Police immediately began searching the area and following leads. In 2006, the Carol Sund Carrington Foundation offered a $5,000 reward for information leading to Cavanaugh's safe return. Despite these efforts, no substantial information emerged. As years became decades, the case went cold. 21 years later, on the afternoon of October 5, 2025, the Mansfield Fire Department discovered partial human remains floating in Mansfield Hollow Lake. At 2:38 in the afternoon, Connecticut State Police from Troop C Barracks were notified and responded immediately. Fire personnel had already secured the remains and brought them to shore. The Eastern District Major Crime Squad assumed control of what was now being treated as a potential homicide or suspicious death investigation. The Office of the Chief Medical Examiner responded to the scene and transported the remains for detailed examination. Given the condition of the remains and the need for a thorough search of the surrounding area, state police coordinated with multiple agencies to mount a comprehensive operation. The Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection provided specialized equipment and personnel familiar with the lake. State police canine units were deployed to search the shoreline. The Emergency Services Unit dive team was activated to conduct underwater operations in what would become an extensive search of the lakebed. Over the following weeks, investigators worked methodically to search the area where the remains had been discovered. On October 21st, divers made several crucial discoveries beneath the surface of the lake. They located additional human remains that had apparently separated from the body over time. More significantly, they found a submerged vehicle resting on the lakebed. The vehicle was a 1996 Mazda B2300 pickup truck. Divers recovered parking passes, a name tag, and a license plate from inside and around the truck. Detectives cross-referenced these items with missing persons cases. The evidence pointed to Robert Cavanaugh, who had been driving a 1996 Mazda B2300 when he disappeared. The location was also significant. Mansfield Hollow Lake was an area Cavanaugh knew well from living in the community. The remains were transported to the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. An anthropologist examined the skeletal remains and noted evidence of prior shoulder surgery. Investigators contacted the family and confirmed that Robert Cavanaugh had undergone shoulder surgery during his lifetime. Examiners reviewed logos and clothing labels found with the remains, establishing that the clothing was consistent with styles from the mid-2000s, supporting the 2004 timeline. DNA analysis provided final confirmation. Samples from the remains were compared against reference DNA. The testing took several weeks due to the condition of remains submerged over 20 decades. On November 13, 2025, the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner notified police. The DNA conclusively matched Robert Cavanaugh. On November 14, 2025, Connecticut State Police announced the identification. The remains from Mansfield Hollow Lake belonged to Robert Cavanaugh, who had been 51 when reported missing on December 24, 2004. After 21 years, the case was officially closed. For the Cavanaugh family, the confirmation brought profound grief and long-awaited closure. His children, who had ranged from teenagers to young adults when he disappeared, were now in their 30s and 40s with their own children. They had built careers and families while carrying the burden of not knowing what happened to their father. Teresa Cavanaugh, speaking for the family, expressed deep gratitude for everyone who worked on the case. She specifically noted how kind, compassionate, and sensitive the detective, fire department personnel, dive team members, and medical examiner staff had been throughout the entire process. The family also used this moment to speak publicly about mental health awareness. Diana and Teresa emphasized that their father's case illustrated how someone can appear happy and fulfilled on the outside while struggling tremendously on the inside. Their father had been a loving, engaged parent and a dedicated worker who seemed to enjoy his life and shared joy with others. Yet beneath that exterior, he was battling mental health challenges that ultimately became overwhelming. The siblings encouraged others to prioritize mental health, to ask for help when struggling, and to recognize that the people around them might be suffering in ways that are not immediately visible. The funeral was held privately, with only family members in attendance. The children found comfort in the knowledge that they were keeping their father's memory alive through their own parenting. They were raising their own children with the same love, attention, and outdoor adventures that Robert Cavanaugh had provided for them. They taught them to fish, to play sports, and to appreciate nature, just as he had done. That was how he chose to live his life, and that became his endearing legacy. The case represents one of many missing person investigations that remain open for years or even decades before finally reaching resolution through preserved records, eventual discovery of remains, and advances in forensic identification techniques. For Robert Cavanaugh's family, the 21-year wait for answers had finally come to an end.